Good morning, Catskills. It is autumn. It is cold. It is gray. It is rainy. It is muddy. Yes, I've been waiting for this. I've enjoyed the warm weather too, but you know, it's November now, right? It's proper November, and we're here together, and we're here in community. Welcome, as Jenny said, to everyone joining us, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome. We're so glad to be together and to be together in meaning making and worship. As we do each Sunday, we'll begin with lighting our chalice. And if you wish, you can join us in our chalice lighting words that we recite together. We light this chalice in grateful, loving community. Even in the darkest of times, may its flame light paths to courage, justice, and hope. And our words of affirmation. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. Here we are united in this week. I think just to highlight a couple, because it's a big week coming up, on Tuesday at 7 o'clock on the Reformed Church on Fair Street is our gratitude service at 7, and 4 members of our choir are singing. So anyone who wants to come to that, 7 o'clock Reformed Church. And on Thursday is our common read, Mistakes and Miracles, a book about multiculturalism and congregations. You don't have to have read the book. Come along. It's here at 6 o'clock on Thursday. And then Sunday there's another service with me again. I may say something different, or I may not. Let's see what it is. So we begin with, well, we have begun, but we'll open our hearts to the song. We'll sing number 185. The words are in the gray hymnal or on the screen there. Your mercy, O eternal one. Let us sing together. Words by the great Hindu and interfaith mystic and scholar Rabindranath Tagore. We have a story here today, and this story, we're talking a little bit about Hinduism in the sermon. This story isn't actually, I saw it in a collection of Hindu stories, but it's actually, it's by Rumi, who was a Sufi Muslim, but drew from many different traditions, and it concerns a bird who, I think, there we go. There was a lovely bird that a merchant had, and this bird was he kept it in his finest. The merchant kept it in his finest golden cage, and the bird had an incredibly lovely song. The bird had an incredibly lovely song.
What is the song?
I don't know. I was hoping you would provide it. There we go. That was good. So, and all day and all night, this bird would sing, and the merchant was so happy with the bird. And one day the merchant was traveling and went to, was going off to India, as it happened, and said to all his household, you know, what can I get? And people asked for presents. And the bird said, well, actually, that's where my family is from. That's where I'm from. Could you just send greetings that I'm here and I sing all day and I'm kept in a wonderful golden cage and I'm here in this big house. And so the merchant said, sure, and went on his way and got all these presents for all of his family. And then he saw a bunch of birds that looked like this bird and said, oh, just saying that, bringing word from my friend, the bird, who's in this house, and just saying that I just wanted to bring word that he sings all day and he's kept in a wonderful golden cage and he's in this house. And upon hearing that, this bird just died. And it was very sudden, and the merchant said, "Oh my goodness, what is this about?" So the merchant went back, felt really with a sorrowful heart, and went back to his house. And he said to the bird in the cage, he said, I did what you requested because I love you, and I said, well, to you, I saw people I thought was your family, and I said you were doing well, and you're in a cage, and then this bird just died, and I don't know, maybe she felt so bad for you that she died. Upon hearing this, the bird in the cage died as well. Oh no! And so the merchant took the bird. It was really, of course, brokenhearted as he would be. Took the bird out of the cage and was going to bury the bird and carried it over. Was about to bury it, and all of a sudden, the bird popped up to life again. Woo! It was just resting, was pining for the fjords. And the merchant said, What happened? And the bird said, oh, the other bird's not dead either. Hooray! But the bird had been sending, when they heard that, she was sending a message to me. And when she heard that I was in a cage, she said, it's better to not be in a cage. So she sent a message that it's far better to be alive and out in the world. And so the bird got the message and pretended to die as well. And on hearing that, the merchant's heart was both glad and brokenhearted at the same time, which is a thing you can be. Very glad for the bird and brokenhearted that he had kept this beautiful bird in a cage. So we let the bird go, and the bird was very happy with his friend the merchant and lived out in the world. And all day long you could hear the bird's beautiful song. And it cheered the merchant's heart. So there you go, a story by the great seer Rumi of the bird in the golden cage. So now we'll sing our children out. We love you, and we're singing out to your activities, and hope you have a wonderful day, and see you a little later. So let's sing our children out to their concentration. As you leave this friendly place, give light to every face. May the kindness which you learn light your hearts till you return. Now we have a reading. This is a reading from a spiritual source. It's not specifically Hindu. There will be a little bit of Shiva in this sermon. Don't worry. But this story is by Melanie Svoboda Shevy.
Thank you for the story, Reverend Bob. A lot of tweeting going on today. Oops, sorry. So the quote at the beginning of the story is by Meister Eckhart. The fruit of letting go is birth. Some things in nature shed. Take trees. The sycamore tree sheds its bark every year, as does the birch. We humans sometimes use the shedding barks of trees to make things. Native Americans used the bark from birch trees to fashion their canoes. Today we still make bottle corks from the bark of the cork oak tree. We weave other bark fibers into cloth, such as flax, hemp, and rami. We also harvest things like gum and latex from the barks of other shedding trees. We even eat the perfumed bark of Sri Lankan saplings, better known as cinnamon. Trees are not the only things that shed. Animals do too. In the animal world, shedding is called molting. Molting is the routine shedding of feathers in birds, old hairs in mammals, old skin in reptiles, and the entire exoskeleton in arthropods. First, the birds. The molting in birds is a rather slow process compared to molting in other animals. Birds cannot shed their feathers all at once, or they would not be able to fly. Besides, if they were featherless, they would freeze to death in chilly weather. So birds shed old feathers, only a couple at a time. When an old feather falls out, a new pin feather grows where the old feather used to be. When the pin feather becomes a full feather, another old feather will fall off. Molting in birds seems quite orderly, but it does take time. Many mammals shed their winter coats when spring comes around. Cat and dog owners know what a pain this can be as they run around the house, sweeping up hairs from the floor and using a sticky thingamajig to get the hairs off the couch before the company arrives. Some reptiles, like snakes, shed their skin in order to grow. A typical snake sheds its skin by rubbing itself against something like a rock or a tree. Usually the skin comes off in one piece, starting with the head. It is a little like taking off a sock. Arthropods, such as beetles, shed their entire exoskeleton, a fancy word for shell. Though beetles never get too big for their britches, they do get too big for their shells. Thus, shedding enables them to grow. What about us humans? Believe it or not, we too shed. In fact, the top layer of our skin sheds about every 2 weeks. We are constantly getting new hairs too, unless, of course, we are bald. Shedding is a good image for spiritual growth. When plants and animals are shedding, they are sloughing off their former selves. As we grow spiritually, we too might have to shed. Shed what? We shed things like ideas, attitudes, unhealthy behaviors, and even part of our former selves.
Thank you, Jenny. Now, as is our tradition here, we invite anyone who wishes to share a joy or concern, a hope or sorrow, if there's something in your life or the life of someone close to you that you'd like to action and meditation, and then we'll sing the hymn. We'll sing it seated, Spirit of Life, a couple times, and then we'll have a little time of silence as we enter into this time of reflection and prayer. Let us join our hearts. Spirit of life and love, we who are ever changing, ever growing and fading, ever shedding and taking on new aspects, ever turning over new leaves and then letting them go. We ever changing people, we take a moment now to reflect on our lives and be grateful. We are thankful for this life, thankful for our companions on this journey, our human companions, as well as the trees that give us breath, the animals with whom we share this incredible living tapestry of beauty. On this Sunday after the election, we give thanks to all the volunteers who keep our democracy going, all the poll workers and all those who live their convictions with sincerity and purpose. We are thankful for our country. We are thankful for our veterans, many of whom were very young women and young men, young people, when they volunteered to do what was asked of them. Whatever our views and experiences and feelings on the horrors of war, Let us strive together to keep all people of this world from harm and keep our world at peace. We give thanks to all those who are healing and keep in our hearts all those who are waiting for healing, waiting for good news, waiting for a sliver of hope. We wait with them. We keep in our hearts, as we do each week, those who are grieving, and pray that they may be comforted. We are an ever-changing people, just like life of all descriptions keeps changing. O Spirit of all life, help us to let go of what we are holding on to too tightly. Help us bring about reincarnation within us, a spiritual rebirth, a reawakening. May we be open to the new, even as we grieve what was before. And amidst all the changes, help us to live in the fullness of life. Amen. I invite us to sing together A Spirit of Life. It's 123 in the hymnals. We'll sing it a couple of times. Remain seated, and then we'll have a little time of silence and reflection. May love be in our hearts, may justice be the work of our hands, and may peace be the way we are together.
Half of the Sunday collection is donated to a local charity. This month's charity is the Worker Justice Center of New York, which pursues justice for those denied human rights with a focus on agricultural and other low-wage workers through legal representation, community empowerment, and advocacy for institutional change. As you can see on the screen, there are different ways to donate. You can donate using the donate page on our website with PayPal or by mailing your check through the mail. And there should be a QR code on the order of service for PayPal. And the offertory today is played by Catherine, You Showed Me the Way, by Bud Green, Ella Fitzgerald, Teddy McRae, and Chick Webb, arranged by Duke Ellington.
Thank you for all that you bring to this congregation. This congregation is a gathering of gifts and would not exist without the generosity of so many people who bring a little of who they are, including financial support, talent, and treasure, and time. Thank you for all that you bring to this place. So the title of this sermon is In Praise of Shiva. Sometimes you choose the sermon ahead of time, and then the week before you think, why did I choose that? What was the topic? But this sermon is about, if you're curious, and it's Shiva, not sitting Shiva, which are two different things, though they're both worthy of sermons. Maybe sitting Shiva will be next week, who knows? The sermon is about how life has a way of happening. Life happens. And that, although we often dread life happening, it is not, on balance, such a bad thing. And I'll explain that in more detail. But first, a disclaimer. This sermon, as I say, is about the Hindu god Shiva a little bit, who I'm fascinated by, but I am not a Hindu, and so this is not properly really a sermon about Hinduism. And I mean, I could bring my intro to world religions that I had in seminary, or my, reading the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, and I have been interested in Hinduism for probably 20 years now, and studied it a little bit, but by no stretch of the imagination am I an authority on Hinduism. So everything I say about Hinduism should be taken with a heavy grain of salt, I think. But One thing that this is focused on, and I do, if board wants to fund a fact-finding trip to India, I'd be delighted. We'll discuss it. But what I think is probably more or less true about Hinduism, and this is really entry-level awareness of Hinduism, is that there's a pantheon of many different gods in Hinduism, and among the pantheon there are three that are worshipped most of all: Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. Sometimes they have different names or different aspects, but it's those three: Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. And they can be said, and again, we're trying to sum up a religion of 1.2 billion people, so this is complicated. Anything we say is not 100% accurate, but it can be said that Brahman is the god of creation. Brahman brought the whole universe into existence. To those of us who maybe grew up in a Judeo-Christian background, this might be the easiest Hindu god to understand. God the Creator is often invoked in Judaism and Christianity and praised, as many hymns have called something like "Praise with Joy," the world's creator. And in many different religious traditions, not just Judaism and Christianity, they offered that praise to that energy, that force, that power that created all of this. So that's Brahman. We get Brahman, right? And then there's Vishnu, and Vishnu is often said to be the preserver. Vishnu maintains the universe, keeps things going from moment to moment. We can also understand, I think pretty readily, why Vishnu might be worshipped. We sometimes say, "Preserve me from evil." Or how many of those of us of every religion or no religion have wished or implored or prayed or even just had this hope in our hearts to preserve the life of someone close to us when they have been stricken by illness, some cancer, or just walked out the door and they, maybe it was someone in our family and we were concerned for them, right? So we all know that inner prayer, if it's a prayer or something even deeper than a prayer, that wish for preservation for ourselves and for others. And we know it doesn't always turn out the way we hoped it would, but praying to Vishnu, I think, is pretty perfectly understandable to all of us. But then, and here we get to the point of this sermon, there is Shiva. And Shiva is sometimes said to be the god of destruction. So the question that I'd love to explore here in this introductory sermon is, why would anyone worship a god of destruction? And lots of people do. By adherence, Shiva is by far the most popular god in Hinduism. The temples overflow with worshipers. Statues are all over India, in fact, all over the world. Shiva is very popular, and in all the different incarnations of Shiva. Now, I'm not going to give you the anthropological answer here or the answer from the view of comparative religions. Those are both worthy avenues. I want to kind of talk about it on a spiritual/emotional level. And I do so, again, not as an expert, and I do so not merely because I think this is a curious matter, though I am curious, but because I think it is a deeply important question. Because destruction is a fact of all our lives. Things fall apart, as Chinua Achebe put it, quoting Yeats, wasn't he? Anyway, but we lose things. Things are taken from us. And some of these losses, some of the destruction in life, some of these losses are pretty trivial, though it may not feel like it at the time. A few times, well, many times, I've misplaced a book I was reading, put it somewhere I don't remember, or even left it on a bus, and I have quite a sense of grievance about this. Come on, how am I going to know how it ends? I rage about it for a little while, but then I find another book or a magazine, or I just look out the window, and I discover that it's really not all that bad. There are other losses, though, where we have every right, I think, to rage at the heavens. Many people I know in this room today have lost at least one person very close to them. It's one thing that so many of us share. Many of us have lost loved ones who died too young, far too young. This makes it feel particularly perverse on a surface view that anyone would worship a god of destruction. It should be said that Shiva is much more than a god of just destruction. Shiva is often associated with asceticism, with the path of wisdom. Statues of Shiva often show God wearing a snake. You heard that reading about the shedding, right? So the snake brings to mind this sense of shedding ourselves, stripping away the layers, and then entering into change and reincarnation, becoming new forms. We might shed, Svoboda said in the reading, things like ideas, attitudes, unhealthy behaviors, even parts of our former selves. And in the worship of Shiva, that's very much a part of the practice, shedding these harmful aspects of ourselves and reaching a new level of reality. And we're capable of this. Like the trees, we are capable of letting go every year. Like the trees, though sometimes we may not believe it, but it's true, like the trees, we can let go. And then in the next season, grow something new. We may not always know what it is we can grow, but we are capable of shedding and we are capable of growth. Shiva can also be said to be the god of changes. Brahman's the creator, everything's here, fantastic. Vishnu's the preserver, things stay in existence from one moment to the next, that's a wonderful thing. And Shiva is the god or the aspect of God that is life. For all life is change, and all change is destruction. You have to destroy the old in order to create the new. That's the way that it works. People who study grief will tell you there's a grief associated with every change, because every change in life involves some sort of destruction. You can get a fabulous new job that you just love, move somewhere that you absolutely adore, make fine friends, and it could be as great as it possibly could be. But there might be, and there probably would be, this moment where you feel this slight pang. Because even if it's a change to vastly superior circumstances, it's still a change. And every change is a little bit of a death of the old way of being. Your body, your spirit has to go, oh, and realize this little death. This old way has died. I've shed my skin and I'm now a new snake, a new tree. So there'll always be that period of adjustment, which can be a sudden realization or can be the work of 40 years. Change is hard, and this is obvious, but I think here in the West, here in the USA, we are especially terrified of change. I don't know if anybody noticed, but we had an election here recently. And every 2 years, we go into a panic about what might happen, because there are very real consequences, and those consequences can be really bad. There was a lot to be scared of. But then we get election night and the days and days of vote counting, and we learn again that there's something worse than change, right? And that's waiting for change to happen, right? How many times have I heard, maybe you've heard it too, I don't want to get a bad diagnosis when somebody's waiting for the news, right? And the doctors don't know and they're waiting and they're saying, we need to consult more doctors and waiting. I've heard this many times. And it's like, you don't want to hear, you certainly don't want to hear the worst, but it's almost worse waiting and not knowing and not having that diagnosis, just waiting for change to happen and knowing that it's coming, but not knowing when it's coming. Change is hard, and waiting for change is sometimes even harder. The Greek Stoics, changing continents a little here, suggested that we meditated on our own misfortune so that when it actually happened, we weren't so attached. And this sounds a bit mad at first. Why would we reflect on bad things happening? But if at the moment you buy a cell phone, you think, you know what, at some point, I'm probably going to drop this thing in the washing machine and it won't work anymore. And I'll be upset about it a little while, but then it'll be fine. And when it happens, and I do practice this, by the way, it does work. And when it happens, or I drop my phone on the driveway and accidentally run over, or whatever it happens, you think, I knew that would happen. The Stoics, like the Buddhists, like the Hindus, understood that life includes a great deal of suffering. There is no way to be alive and not have these things happen to you. And let's remember, the vast majority of the 1.2 billion Hindus in the world are quite poor by our standards, many without adequate health care, in some cases without clean water, and bad things happen. Well, they're very familiar with bad things happening. So embracing change is quite a tall order. Can we learn to live with suffering? Can we ever really get used to it? Followers of Shiva will often become sadhus or sadhvas, holy men and women who renounce all their worldly possessions, take to the road, beg and live off the generosity of others, and serve the community while they search for the truth. So they just let go. They're constantly on this process of letting go and letting go and letting go and living into the uncertainty. And it doesn't mean that life, the number of changes reduce. It means they become more and more open to them, perhaps. This is varying to different traditions, but I remember a lovely conversation I had with a Tibetan Buddhist monk once in a Thai restaurant in New Jersey. Our congregation in New Jersey, UU congregation, was hosting. We weren't holding them. They were not in a cage. They were welcome to go where they wanted. Hosting these 8 Buddhist monks, 7 from Tibet and 1 who originally hailed from California, though he lived in India for about 20 years. And we were having this delicious, really spicy Thai food, and we got to talking. And the Californian Tibetan Buddhist told me that every morning he meditates on his own death, reflects on the fact he's going to die, and it makes him happy. He said it brings a big smile to his face. And I am generally, by no just pure luck, I'm generally, thank God, far from suicidal. And I believe this gentleman was too, but I believe I understood him. How liberating to realize we're not here forever, right? To actually embrace that. We're not here, we have this life. In the West, we're often so terrified of death. We spend billions of dollars trying to live just a little longer, extend our lifespan by a few months. And I love life, I get it. I probably do the same thing. But I've also loved the phrase, this too shall pass. Have a terrible toothache? This too shall pass. Going through a breakup? This too shall pass. Waiting for the election results? This too shall pass. It may take a while. And the whole span of my own life, or this incarnation of life, as it may be, I'm not trying to wish it away. I want it to last a long time. But it takes on a different quality, right? A different aspect when we truly realize that we're not here forever. If we really get it, right down to our bones, that this form we're in will slough off us like a snake's skin, that we're a part of this life of changes that we see all around us all the time, that we're changing too, and we're just like the leaves, we're temporary and we're beautiful. We're part of this beautiful aspect of reality. Well, it doesn't make it any less precious, does it? But perhaps we don't have to grasp quite as tightly, and we can just really enjoy this life. What if we finally accepted that none of this was forever? I know I've preached a slight variant of this before, and I know some of you have already gotten there years ago, maybe especially those of you who are there, I say, on the other side of 70. So forgive me for bringing out this old truism. But maybe it is true that as we get older, we sometimes do get wiser. We look back on life with all of its changes. So many changes in your life, right? So many, not all of them expected. So many changes, some of them dreadful in the moment. But when we look back on these welcome and unwelcome changes and we say, you know what? It's really not so bad, right? Life is pretty good. Not that good like this is good and this is bad and coffee is good and I don't know what's bad compared to coffee. Dr. Pepper is bad. Oh, I like Dr. Pepper, but yeah, I hear you. But not in the individual things, but the whole tapestry of life and the whole journey from good to bad and the whole way our moods go, oh my God, life is awful. And then being like, oh, this is amazing for a moment. And then we get bored or something goes wrong and we get annoyed. Actually, life is beautiful, right? Even that whole cycle is kind of beautiful. So we can say with our full hearts, praise Shiva, praise these changes that we can't predict. Praise Brahman, praise the creation. We're glad the world is here for sure. Praise Vishnu. We want our loved ones and ourselves to remain happy and healthy for a long, long time. And praise Shiva, praise the God of change. Praise Ganesh and Kali, the destruction of all the obstacles on our way towards full enlightenment. Praise Shakti, the love which animates our being, that creative power, that energy of compassion and love. Praise, and I'm shifting traditions, praise Coyote. Praise Anansi, the trickster gods who throw our cell phones into the fire and teach us something about life. Praise Shiva. Praise the trees that teach us again and again, every season, how we might live into the season and how we might be reborn. Hallelujah and amen. Let us sing together Let It Be by Rick Marston, of beloved memory. Let It Be a Dance. It's number 311. You may be seated. These closing words. I thought I would share a poem by a poet who was here 10 days ago in this poetry space, Richard Levine. Some of you may know, and he's a veteran as well. So I just love this little poem because it also features birds. We're talking about birds. Believe this. All morning doing the hard root wrestling work of turning a yard from the wild to a gardener's will, I heard a bird singing from a hidden, though not distant perch. A song of swift, syncopated syllables sounding like, can you believe? Believe this? Believe? Can you believe this? Believe this? Believe? And all morning, I did believe. All morning, between break-even bouts with the unwanted, I wanted to see that bird and looked up so I might recognize it later in a guide and know and call its name. But even more, I wanted to join its church. For all morning and many a time in my life, I have wondered who, beyond this plot I work, has called the order of being, that givers of food are deemed lesser than are the receivers. All morning, muscling my will against that of the wild to claim a place in the bounty of earth. Seed, root, sun, and rain, I offered my labor as a kind of grace and gave thanks even for the aching in my body, which reached beyond this work and this gift of struggle. Friends, let us offer our labor as a kind of grace. Let us listen to the birds, and let us be aware of how thankful we are, even for the aching in our bodies, for this life of change that we get to be a part of. May it be so. Amen. And now we extinguish this chalice with our closing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. You I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Thank you to Jenny, Catherine, Tom, Don, everybody who helped out with this